49ers faithful, today the heartbeat is racing because this is one of those days when every story hits both the present and the future of this franchise at the exact same time. We've got a hot draft debate, a massive possibility being talked about to boost this roster, a red warning light flashing in the run game, and a division chess move that could shake up San Francisco's whole plan. So take a breath, because today's script is not about blind hype, and it's not about fantasy either. It's about looking at every scenario with passion, but also with clear eyes. Subscribe and come ride with me. There's a draft possibility starting to build real buzz around the 49ers, and this is where the first real tension of the day kicks in. Zion Young, edge rusher out of Missouri, is a name that could land on San Francisco's radar in the 2026 draft, but we've got to frame this the right way. We're talking draft projection, fit analysis, board value, not a locked-in pick. And when you look at his profile, it's easy to see why his name is popping up. He's big, strong, long, and extremely disciplined against the run. The kind of defender who knows how to set the edge, hold leverage, and punch through contact with authority. Against the run, he looks like a guy who could help early. But that's exactly where this conversation starts to heat up. What do the 49ers really need right now? More toughness against the run, or a real quarterback hunter off the edge? Because based on the scouting picture here, Zion Young does not win with explosion. He does not terrify people with freak bend, and he's not walking into the league with that kind of flexibility that changes third downs by itself. His game leans on power, contact, consistency, and a more controlled kind of early impact. In other words, he feels like the kind of player where you know pretty quickly what he is, but maybe without the kind of sky-high ceiling that some other pass rushers in that same range might bring. And that matters a lot for San Francisco. If the physical and stylistic comp to Dorrance Armstrong points to a solid, useful, dependable pro, that's not automatically a bad thing. The problem is the context of this roster. If Myles Williams already gives you that sturdier, run-first profile, does it really make sense to spend premium value on another player who speaks to the same need, but maybe not the biggest weakness on the unit? Because the read here is pretty clear. The 49ers can afford to give up a little run security if it means getting more speed and more pass rush juice. So yes, the fit is there. But the perfect fit for what this team needs right now? Maybe not. And that difference changes everything. Now the temperature jumps in a totally different direction because the second story isn't about a rookie. It's about urgency. And in San Francisco, urgency is never a small word. The argument made by Garrett Podell of CBS Sports is a scenario-based take. With this draft class viewed as thinner at premium positions, maybe a contender like the 49ers should think less about putting all their faith in rookies and more about turning draft capital into proven stars. That is not a report of an active negotiation. That is not a confirmed rumor with wheels already turning. It is a theory. But it is a theory that hits this fan base exactly where the pain still lives. Because the pass rush numbers were brutal. 20 sacks on the season, just 1.18 per game, the lowest mark ever by a playoff team. That is not a footnote. That is a blaring siren in the middle of the night. And when you stack that on top of the fact that Nick Bosa and Myles Williams are both coming off ACL injuries that ended their 2025 seasons early, the picture gets even heavier. The 49ers still won 12 games, still made the playoffs, and still won a postseason game before losing to the Seattle Seahawks, who went on to win the Super Bowl. That tells you this team still has fight, but it also tells you something uncomfortable. They survived without dominating an area that usually decides January football. That is why the biggest name on Podell's list, from his point of view, is Myles Garrett. And let's talk about that honestly, like fans who want a championship and not just another nice season. When a defender like that enters the conversation, even as pure analysis, the imagination takes off like wildfire. Because we are not talking about a patch job. We are talking about a force of nature, a player who changes offensive math, forces plan B and plan C, speeds up a quarterback's internal clock, and wrecks big games without needing an invitation. San Francisco has lived too long with the feeling that Bosa had to carry too much when the front couldn't win together. A move that big would not just improve the defense, it would completely change the way the 49ers could go toe-to-toe with the Seahawks and Rams in a division that looks like another street fight. But there is an uncomfortable side to this, and we cannot bury it under excitement. Podell notes that the 49ers have $26.4 million in effective cap space and already gave up their 2026 third-round pick in the Osa Odigizua trade this offseason. So this is not a clean, simple equation. If the idea is sending the number 27 overall pick and maybe players to go get Garrett, then that is an all chips to the center move. That is the kind of swing that tells the entire locker room, the entire league, and every fan watching, the clock is ticking, and we know it. And honestly, it is hard to say that reading is wrong. Christian McCaffrey turns 30 on June 7, 2026. Mike Evans turns 33 on August 21, 2026. Trent Williams turns 38 on July 19, 2026. Put those facts side by side and it does not sound like panic. It sounds like reality. The window does not slam shut overnight, but it also does not stay open just because we want it to. So here is the question that stings and excites at the same time. Is it worth going all in right now for a transformational piece, even if it costs major assets? Because if there is ever a time to think big, it might be right now. And here's where the script changes speed again, because the third story doesn't call for trade fantasies or draft dreams. It calls for looking a real problem dead in the eye. The 49ers offense has always been dangerous because the running game forced defenses to play in a fog. But last season, that machine never hit its usual gear. San Francisco finished at 3.8 yards per carry, the third worst mark in the league, and the worst of the Kyle Shanahan era. That hits the pride of this team directly, because running the football with authority has never been a side dish in this system. It has always been the engine under the hood. And the most important thing here is not falling for the lazy take and dumping it all on Christian McCaffrey. Of course, his name is the first one people are going to bring up when the run game stalls, because he is the one carrying the ball. But Shanahan himself, speaking at the NFL annual meeting in Arizona, pointed in a different direction. He said the offense had the fewest explosive runs it has ever had, and he tied the issue to a combination of scheme, running back execution, and perimeter blocking. That matters because it blows up the easy narrative that this was one man's fault and forces everybody to look at the whole machine. When you add the rest of the analysis, the picture gets even clearer. The receivers blocked worse on the perimeter than they had in previous years, and the offensive line did not sustain lanes or create clean space quickly enough. And if that's the reality, then it's unfair to expect McCaffrey to rip off explosive runs through muddy, collapsing traffic. In the games where the blocking did show up, against the Falcons, Colts, and Bears, the production showed up too. That does not mean McCaffrey deserves a free pass. It means the problem was structural before it was individual. There is another detail here that really matters heading into 2026. Shanahan said schematic changes and personnel changes through free agency and the draft would be the first steps toward fixing the run game. But the report also points out that the core of the offensive line is staying mostly the same, outside of the opening at left guard. So the pressure does not go away with talk, it gets louder. Because if this group is mostly the same, it has to play at a completely different level. And Shanahan has to own his part too. The number cited here is loud. McCaffrey was much more efficient running inside, with a rushing EPA of plus 7.9 than running outside, where he posted minus 35.8. That is not a tiny wrinkle. That is a tactical flare gun lighting up the sky. So to me, the real discussion is this. The 49ers do not just need to run more. They need to run better, with more honesty in their self-scouting and less attachment to what worked in previous years. If the perimeter does not block, if the line does not create movement, if Shanahan keeps leaning into less efficient ideas, and if McCaffrey is not rotated more intelligently, then 2026 could bring back a frustration that was already way too visible. And a 49ers offense without a real running threat stops being terrifying. It just becomes good. And this roster was not built to be just good. And the fourth story has the kind of tension that really messes with your head, because it involves a division rival, the draft, and a battle between short-term urgency and long-term planning. The idea on the table is this. The Cardinals and the 49ers could both see value in a first-round trade during the 2026 NFL Draft. This is not being reported as a confirmed conversation between the teams. It is being framed as a plausible scenario based on what both sides need. And honestly, it makes sense precisely because Arizona and San Francisco would be looking at the same board through two completely different clocks. From the Cardinals side, the logic would be chasing a quarterback to develop. The name connected here is Alabama's Ty Simpson, described as a borderline first-round prospect and a possible fit for Mike LaFleur. That detail matters because LaFleur knows the Kyle Shanahan school of offense inside and out after 7 seasons in San Francisco. If Arizona sees Simpson as a quarterback who matches that kind of system, then jumping back into the end of round one could become a strategic play to secure him and still buy time before handing him the keys. Again, let's be clear. This is draft projection, not a report that Arizona is already making this move. But the 49ers side of this may be even more fascinating. San Francisco is in that phase where every pick has to bring back real help. This roster can still fight, still scare people, still carry championship ambition. But it also has obvious holes and real pressure for more depth. Left guard stands out. Safety belongs in the conversation. The defensive line needs reinforcements in a bad way. And there is still room to look at wide receiver, tight end, and cornerback. So when a proposal pops up like moving from 27 down to 34, while also picking up 104 and 143, you can start to see the full blueprint. This is not about flash. This is about volume. This is about attacking the middle of the draft like a team trying to reload from multiple angles at once. And that idea gets even stronger, because this class is viewed as deeper in the middle rounds. If the 49ers could stack picks in that range, they could funnel young talent into multiple positions of need instead of walking out of Thursday night with one name and a mountain of pressure on his shoulders. It does not have the Hollywood shine of a flashy late first-round selection, but it might have way more real value in September, October, and December. And honestly, sometimes the smartest move is the one that feels less electric on the clock and a whole lot more powerful when the season starts breathing fire. So let me throw this to you, Niners faithful. If that scenario were sitting right in front of you, would you trade down from pick 27 and load up on more ammo to attack multiple needs? Or would you stay put and bet on one player in round one? Because that kind of decision says a lot about how each of us sees this team's window right now. At the end of the day, today's picture is crystal clear, and it hits every 49ers fan right in the chest. This team still has the firepower to dream big, but it cannot afford to misread the moment anymore. If Zion Young represents a questionable fit, Myles Garrett represents the temptation of a full-send swing. If the run game slipped, the draft might be the chance to rebuild the muscle and depth underneath this roster. None of those paths guarantees the future by itself. What gives this team a real shot is choosing with courage and clarity. And that is exactly where San Francisco is about to show whether it is reacting to the past or building the next leap. If you believe in that path, drop your take in the comments and come back tomorrow so we can keep fighting this battle together.